Welcome back to another episode of the Tracy Take. We're doing this a little bit different today, so you guys are going to hear our intro. Please make sure before we get to the episode that you like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below whether you like or dislike what we're saying, because we can be wrong, and from our last videos we can tell you guys like to let us know that.
Mhm.
So today we are going to be talking about the Detroit Lions. Last year, a little bit of a disappointing season for Lions fans, but they have a few things I think that they can hang their hat on, not only on this
Mhm.
season but also moving forward into the next few seasons. Uh, so I guess kind of to get it started, I think we should go ahead and talk about their offseason, kind of who they lost and who they got back to try and replace some of those pieces.
Yeah, and so, like, right out of the gate, if I'm not mistaken, I think this was one of the first major moves of the offseason, but Lions have a new quarterback in Jared Goff coming over from the LA
Mhm.
Rams, traded for Matt Ryan and not Matt Ryan,
Matt,
Matthew Stafford. Sorry, Falcons
yeah,
fan. Uh, but so Matt Stafford's not the quarterback anymore, but they did receive several first round picks out of it, so I think it's going to
yeah,
help them when they're with their rebuild. And but one of
mhm,
the bigger things that they did lose a lot of other pieces as well. They lost a lot
yeah,
of their top receivers, Kenny Galladay and Marvin Jones. They also lost several key pieces, I think, on the defensive side of the ball. Jared Davis, Christian Jones,
yeah.
Jamal Agnew,
Gerard Davis, yeah,
Gerard Davis. My apologies. But so that being said, the Lions are, I think, in a clear definition of a rebuild. But
hmm,
kind of as you mentioned already, they are setting up the foundation of preparing and hoping to become just division competitive more than anything,
yeah,
and try to win a division, and then be playoff and potentially Super Bowl competitive. Because I think the people of Detroit really would like to see a Super Bowl winning team there, because they've had some abysmal
yeah,
teams over the past couple of years. But they started out
mhm,
though with drafting their future star left tackle Penei Sewell. Penei
mhm,
Sewell is highly regarded and is one of those generational talents that we all knew um,
mhm,
coming into this draft. And I think he adds a great addition to this offensive line and to this team. And
yeah,
coincidentally enough, though, he's not going to start out at left tackle just yet. He's going to start out at right tackle, I believe, because
yeah.
they have a very solid left tackle in
Yeah.
Taylor Decker
Ta
already
Taylor
there.
Decker was the 19th overall tackle in the NFL last year, so that
Hmm.
included left tackles and right tackles. And then they're also adding them to a pretty solid interior offensive line. Frank Ragnow was the is their who's their center is their four was the hold on. Frank Ragnow, their center, was ranked fourth overall of all interior offensive linemen. So that includes right and left guard and center.
Wow.
I will say Jonah Jackson is a second year player. I think for the
Hmm.
Lions that'll take a big step forward. The only weakness I feel like that they have on their offensive line is at right guard, and I have no idea how to pronounce his first name, but his last name is Vaitai. He's their right guard, and that's the only, like, I guess, quote unquote weakness. But I guess it's more of like like the weak point, just because
Hmm.
he's not as talented as some of the other guys, but he has loads of help, and I think that'll really help him in 2021. In
Yeah.
2020, they finished out the season with the 13th ranked overall offensive line. I expect them to be in the 7 to 8 range this year come the end of the season. I think this offensive line is really talented, and I think it'll
Hmm.
play a really big role into the way that they run their offense.
Yeah.
The emphasis on run their offense. So,
Yeah. Yeah, they're going to be having. I would say that would probably be one of the stronger points of the just the whole Lions team to begin with.
mhm,
Would be their positions on the offensive line. They do have
mhm,
DeAndre Swift coming back. He had 521 yards and 8 touchdowns for them last year. He
yeah.
split time with Adrian Peterson, who had a little bit more yards than him, but Adrian
Mhm,
Peterson's not back on the team. He's one of
yeah.
their departures.
They did sign Jamal Williams to kind of
Yep.
help bring in some of that roles, and I think that's a really good running back tandem that they have.
Hmm.
And I think those guys will. I I could see them combining for 1,500 rushing yards this year, and then
Yeah,
maybe
I can
getting
see
a
that.
few extra yards out of the passing game. They're both kind of. I think Jamal Williams is a little bit bigger than him, but they both have that ability to run and catch out of the backfield, which I think adds an interesting dynamic. And so
Hmm.
one last thing that I want to touch on the offense before we get into the defense is the fact that they lost their two main pass catchers last
Yep.
season in Kenny Golladay and Marvin Jones. You already said that. Um, and those are some really big losses. I
Yeah.
mean, those are two guys that got high dollar in free agency. Um, and then they replaced them with not so great options.
Yeah.
Tyrell Williams and Brashad Perriman are just they're a good wide receiver 2 or 3. I feel like, but when they're your go-to guys, it's not as good.
Well,
Like,
and this is giving me with their offensive weapons that they have now. This is giving me similar vibes to, I think, what the Raiders are going to experience this year with T.J.
mm-hmm,
Hawkinson being the number one guy, the number one receiver. He was probably Matt Stafford. Well, actually, not Matt Stafford's favorite target, but Matt Stafford liked throwing the ball to him because he had
yeah,
723 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. And when you look at the supporting cast now, um, he's going to be clearly the number one guy. I
yeah,
think for Jared Goff to throw to. I think one guy to look out to. I think that's going to have some good opportunity. I think to be successful is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown coming in potentially
yeah,
playing in the slot role. Uh,
mm-hmm,
his competition is going to be if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Khalif Raymond. He was a
yeah,
Tennessee Titans slot receiver last year,
yeah,
and only had 200 yards. So I think there's some opportunity for him to come in and
yeah.
potentially be
And
successful.
another guy too that could potentially catch some passes for the Lions next year is Quintez Cephas. He's a second-year guy out of Wisconsin.
Hmm.
He's a guy who will definitely have opportunities to make plays. Not the most physically talented guy, but a solid route runner with good hands. So
Yeah.
he could carve out a role there uh, as a pass catcher.
Yeah.
I do want to move on to this defense. Like you said, this defense lost a lot. They did end up adding Michael Brockers,
Hmm.
and they actually added, in my opinion, really good depth to the defensive line through the draft. I really like
Yeah.
Levi Onwuzurike
Hmm.
and Alim McNeil. Those are two tougher names to pronounce, but both of those guys I think will get significant playing time this season. And then they also have veteran Trey Flowers from last season, who plays like that outside linebacker edge role. And I think this defensive line will be very physical. Where I see a drop off in talent and experience is kind of in the linebacker and secondary. Jeff
Yeah.
Okuda is going into his second year, and I think he'll definitely be a lot better than he was.
Yeah.
But I think will be a much tougher point for the Lions.
Hmm. Yeah. And one name I don't remember you mentioned it, but another name I think to bolster up that defensive line was Romeo Okwara. Sorry about that,
Yeah,
but
Romeo Aguara.
yeah, he was the sack leader last year with 10 sacks. So
Mhm.
with him and Michael Brockers, that's 15 sacks total. If they could
Yeah,
reproduce that,
yeah,
that will be something for other teams to pay attention to. But I agree that the linebacking core and the secondary will be interesting. They lost Darren Herman, their free safety,
mhm,
uh, Jerron Curse, Christian Jones, and Reggie Ragland were the two linebackers that they lost. So it'll be interesting to
mhm.
see who comes in and fill those roles. It is believed that they did. Who did they end up getting? They got somebody in free agency, I thought. Quentin Dunbar could potentially
Yeah,
come
yeah,
in.
yeah.
Yeah, it could
He's a
potentially
little
come in
older. I
and
want to
fill
say
some
he's
roles.
29 or 30.
Hmm.
So he's a little bit older, but he is an experienced veteran that could help groom younger talent. I
Yeah,
do want to go ahead and kind of carry over into our last segment here and talk about their record prediction. So uh, the Lions have a pretty tough schedule overall,
yeah,
and they have a really tough first few games.
yeah. Their
So
first, yeah.
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say their first three games: San Francisco, Green Bay, Baltimore. That's going to be tough for this team.
Yeah.
Going to be a lot of inexperienced guys. Also, a lot of guys learning the system.
Hmm.
Don't see them really coming out of that with the winning schedule. I would be very shocked if they did, honestly.
Yeah. Oh no. So yeah, and then even after that, going to Chicago, I think Chicago is going to be better than a lot of teams give them credit for. At least they'll be a
Hmm.
lot. They'll be more competitive. And then uh, going to Minnesota is probably a loss. And then skip forward to week 7, they have to go to the Rams. And then on the back half of their schedule, they have to go to Cleveland, to Denver, to Atlanta, to Seattle, and then play Green Bay in week 18. So,
Yeah, yeah. I like that you gave Detroit the win there in the last week, just as a courtesy,
well,
as their only
so
win.
Well, yeah. So this is obviously probably worst case scenario. They might sneak out a few games here and there. Like week 6, they play the Bengals at home. Week 8, they play Philadelphia at home.
And they have
Uh,
some division games as well that you never
yeah.
know. But the
Mhm.
biggest thing for them, really, just kind of my final note on the Lions, their biggest thing is going to be the defense. I think they can put up some points with their offensive line, providing enough protection for Jared
Yeah.
Goff and having a pretty consistent running game with two running backs that could probably combine, as you said, for at least 1,000 yards, if
Mhm.
not more than that, potentially even 1,500, like you said. But the issue is
Yeah.
going to be on the defense. They ranked last year in the defense, and it's going to be interesting to see how they bounce back from that and who really
Mhm.
kind of steps up.
Yeah. And another thing too, if they cannot pass the ball effectively, I think that's really going to hurt their chances. Uh, so I think 1-16 is definitely worst case scenario, but hey, at least they'll have a nice high draft pick to go and get either a wide receiver or a
Or a
defensive
quarterback.
player.
Yeah.
Yeah, or a quarterback
Yeah.
if Jared Goff has not played well. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of the Tracy Take. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure that you click on one of these videos that are around my face right now, and make sure to like, subscribe, and comment whether you agree or disagree with us. We appreciate all the feedback. So thank you guys.